The hotel developer ghosted my $90,000 invoice like I was disposable. I dragged his empire into court with a paper trail so brutal the judge ruled instantly. I managed contracts for a luxury architectural lighting supplier. Most elite developers were reasonable. Some intentionally stretched their net 60 terms to the limit, playing chicken with our warnings. But Julian's hospitality group operated in a completely different dimension of entitlement. They ordered 90 grand of custom crystal chandeliers and vanished. They ignored office calls and urgent emails. They treated my formal payment demands like junk mail. I followed our financial protocol to the exact letter. Reminder calls, follow-up emails, accounting statements, and then a strict formal letter. Still absolute silence. Finally, I drafted a severe legal warning, giving them exactly 7 days to wire the funds before we filed a lawsuit. That threat finally worked. They paid the invoice just hours before the legal deadline. Because they had dragged it out so maliciously, I placed their corporate purchasing account on a hard freeze. This meant they could not order a single glass bulb for their grand opening until they proved financial solvency. This restriction was strictly outlined in the contract they had signed. Julian was furious, but instead of picking up the phone to speak with me, he bypassed my desk entirely and complained directly to our CEO, Marcus. He demanded my immediate termination. Marcus dragged me into his glass office. Julian is threatening to pull his nationwide portfolio, Marcus hissed. I handed him my indexed communication logs. Marcus reviewed every ignored timestamp. After checking the data, he asked me to explain the strategy. We agreed that, just this once, I would lift the freeze if Julian verbally guaranteed a firm payment date for his next massive order. If he missed it, the account died. Marcus dialed Julian on speakerphone to explain the truce. The call went straight to a disconnected voicemail tone. I looked at Marcus. This is exactly what happens every single time I try to collect, I explained. Marcus's expression hardened into stone. Follow the corporate policy exactly as written, he whispered. That's when the real bombshell dropped. I reviewed every signed legal document and prepared for war. Julian ordered another 100 grand in fixtures and immediately stopped paying. I didn't get angry. I became entirely surgical. Each week, I called and left a highly specific voicemail. I stated the exact time, the massive debt, and the contractual due date. After every call, I sent an email mirroring the threat. Each new email nested the previous ones, building an unassailable, towering record of his negligence. I continued mailing physical demands. Then, one of my certified letters was returned to my desk. Scrawled across the envelope in cheap blue ink were the words, incorrect address. There was no official post office barcode. They were faking mail returns. Their corporate suite was only 20 minutes away. During my lunch break, I drove to his skyscraper. I bypassed security, walked up to the receptionist, and asked for Julian by name. I claimed I was a junior designer there for an interview. When Julian strutted into the pristine lobby, I stepped directly into his path. Are you seriously halting my shipments over pennies? He barked, realizing exactly who I was. Heat climbed my neck and my vision blurred, but my voice was absolute ice. It is 100 grand, Julian, and you are 90 days delinquent, I snapped. I shoved the forged return envelope and a final 7-day litigation notice directly against his chest. I just wanted to make sure you got my mail. Nice to finally meet you in person. I turned and walked out. After that ambush, I called every single morning. Each voicemail explicitly counted down the days until our lawyers engaged. When the 7-day deadline bled out without a wire transfer, I handed our corporate litigator a monstrous, perfectly indexed binder. She stared at it, completely stunned. She said they rarely receive such lethal documentation, even for federal cases. We dragged Julian into court. The judge stared down at us and demanded to know if we had made reasonable efforts to contact the developer before wasting the court's time. Our litigator smiled and dropped the massive communication file onto the oak table. After reviewing my flawless paper trail, the judge shredded Julian's defense and ruled instantly in our favor. About a week later, the 6-figure payment finally hit our accounts. 1 week after that, I received my first and only email from Julian. We are formally closing our account because we no longer wish to do business with such a hostile vendor, he wrote. I replied instantly. Julian, your account was permanently terminated weeks ago per company policy. Furthermore, your mandated court fees are still outstanding. If they are not settled by dawn, we will initiate asset seizure. The court fee cleared my dashboard the very next day.